Hello, hello, check. Hello, hello, check. Hello.
Hi everyone, we'll begin in a couple of minutes. I request all of you to take a seat, and to anybody who's listening through the store, we have a very special guest and a very special book launch happening on the third floor. This man needs no introduction whatsoever from his spectacular career with the government services to remarkable novels that's literally changed the way the world perceives India. Please welcome Mr. Vikas Swaroop to Sapna.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Natasha, and thank you, Mr. Mehta, and thank you, Sapna Book House, for doing this. I have visited already two of your bookstores in Indranagar and Kormangala, and now in Jayanagar. So it's wonderful to be part of the Sapna family, as it were, India's biggest book mall, and, and to see the love you have given to the girl with the 7 lives, and hope that, readers will relate to it. Absolutely. And will get inspired by the story of Devi and her 7 lives. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm Natasha Doshi. I'm the marketing head at Sapna Book House, and I welcome all of you to today's very special event.
Yes. Okay.
So, if I may ask you the most intriguing but the most basic question, the girl with the 7 lives, Saat Janam, Saat Khoon Maaf, now 7 lives. If you can tell us a little bit about the title, which is so intriguing, and a little bit about the book that you've written.
So thank you, Natasha. Yes, the title is intriguing. It could also have been The Girl with 7 Lives. It could have been A Girl with 7 Lives, but it is The Girl with the 7 Lives. So it's very specific to that particular girl who has the 7 lives. So that was important. This book, I would say, is really about two things. It's about resilience and reinvention. And Bangalore, I think, is the perfect city for us to do a launch in, because Bangalore is the city of reinvention. Everybody is moving from career to career here. Look at the IT professionals. Today they are in Cognizant, tomorrow they are in Wipro, day after tomorrow they are in TCS. So they are constantly reinventing themselves. But you see, the difference between their reinvention and Devi's reinvention is they are just adding to their resume. Okay, 8 months in Cognizant, then 14 months in so and so, then 18 months. But Devi is starting from scratch. Every time she moves to a new city, basically she has to rebuild her, I wouldn't even use the word career, but her life, so to speak. She has to start from scratch. And that's why, this whole concept of reinvention becomes very important to her. Partly also because the police are chasing her wherever she's going. So she has to, get a new identity. And that's why if you look at the chapter headings in the novel, it's Devi, which is the name her mother had given her. Then she becomes Deepa. From there she becomes a Muslim Diba. From there she becomes a Punjabi Dasmeet. From there she becomes a Keralite Deepthi. From there she becomes a Christian Diana. And then finally, I would say, and every woman Dolly. Because Dolly, you really don't know, is she Hindu, is she Muslim, is she Christian, is she Sikh, what is Dolly is just such a generic name. She could be anybody. She could be an every woman. So that's the story. So it's about a story of, this girl called Devi, who's born in a slum, is born in a village, but then, lives out the first few years of her life in a slum, becomes an orphan, loses her entire family by the age of 8, becomes a beggar, acquires a dog, and then, the various adventures that happen to her as we go along. So I would really call it, it's Arabian Nights meets Slumdog Millionaire. Because, the structure is similar to Arabian Nights. And the Arabian Nights, of course, Shahrazad, who could have been killed by her husband, if she did not finish a story. she manages to keep him engaged for 1,001 nights by, every time not finishing the story, keeping the husband dangling, and him wanting to come back the next day and complete the story. So similarly, this is a story over one night. Devi has been kidnapped. Now she's being held hostage in a dimly lit basement by a masked gunman who's threatening to shoot her dead unless she confesses to all the crimes that he's accusing her of, unless she basically reveals all the secrets of her 7 extraordinary lives. So that's the stakes are very high in this one. Because in Slumdog Millionaire, Ram Mohammed Thomas has also been arrested. But, at best, he could have gone to jail. But here, she could be dead. Come morning, she may have lost her life. So the stakes are much higher here. And as a character also, I think she is a much more morally complex character than Ram Mohammed Thomas in Slumdog Millionaire. So it's exciting to create, a slightly flawed, but yet still a very compelling character who the reader should still root for.
Absolutely, sir. And while I was reading this book for the interview, I must tell you, I've been on the edge of my seat. With every chapter and with every narration that she does, I've been so spellbound with the complexities she faces in her life. And literally, the book travels throughout India from city to city. And it's so beautifully written. I think, in my opinion, this is one of your best books so far out of the 4. And
that's very high praise indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Because my problem is I have a cross to bear all my life, and that is called Slumdog Millionaire.
Yes.
So every book they say, how does it measure up to Slumdog Millionaire? If it is made into a film, how does it measure up to the success of Slumdog Millionaire? So that's a problem. But as an author, I want to evolve with every book. I want to improve with every book, and that's why creating this character was much more challenging and much more complex than creating a lovable character that you fall in love with, from the get-go.
in fact, I have so much to talk about the character in itself, but I have another question that strikes me the moment I was reading up about you and I was reading up your planning your introduction. I typed out so much and then I was wondering, how am I going to fit in so much in one page? So you've been in the government services
I was
for...
a member of the Indian Foreign Service.
Yes, for 35 years. Your books are turned into movies, web series. You're donning so many hats at one go. How do you manage to do that? I'm sure you've had this question.
Look, I have not managed to do it very well because I wrote my first book in 2003. It was published in 2005. And we are now in 2024. So what, from 2003 to 2024 is 21 years. In 21 years, I have only produced 4 books. So that's not a great output, but that's precisely because I was always a diplomat. And this was just a passion I was pursuing on the side. It's only now, I retired 3 years ago in June 2021. Now I have the time and the space to create. And probably now, especially if this book does well, that you will see, more regular books coming out. You won't have to wait for 11 years as you had to do with this one, between the last book and this one.
Absolutely. In fact, this is your comeback into the fictional world after 11 whole years.
I call it my return to the world of storytelling.
What inspired you to write the book, sir? I mean, this is a story that, in the most basic way, I can say it's a very hutke story. It's not a story that you usually come across, or your basic coffee table romances. This is so intriguing, so exciting. At the same time, the cliffhangers of the book are... it gets you thinking, ki kya hoga, what will happen next? How is she going to escape? What will happen to her? So that constant question is always on your mind. So how did this story actually come about?
So you see, the genre that I have specialized in and I have made it my own, I call it social thrillers. So there's a difference. A pure thriller is all about the plot. Los Angeles is about to be nuked, and the hero is, rushing through, basically running out of time before the bomb can be diffused. So it's all about the plot, and you are also breathlessly waiting to find out, if the bomb was diffused or not. But the moment the bomb is diffused, you throw away the book, because it was just pure plot. The characters don't stay with you, nothing about the writing stays with you. So it is just pure plot, and once the plot is revealed, you don't even want to read that book a second time. But the kind of books I write, yes, They are thrilling, and as you said, you were kept on the edge of your seat following her 7 lives. But at the same time, there's a lot of social commentary as well. You know, you talk about the stratification of society, you talk about the problems in the juvenile homes for girls, you talk about the daily routine of nurses, you know, you talk about the fake degree racket, you talk about the, you know, intricacies of Godman's ashram, what all goes on in a fake Godman's ashram. So, you know, you get to sort of get vignettes of a lot of issues surrounding you. And plus, you know, I want to always invest my characters with a lot of emotional intensity so that, you know, she becomes a fully flesh and blood character, not just a cardboard character, you know, who's only in search of the plot. And that's why I suppose, you know, that I get queries from readers that, you know, I'm still wondering about her journey, where will she go next? She has reinvented herself, and, you know, please write another book because we would really love to follow her journey again. So that is really what gratifies me. I mean, for a fiction writer, there can be no better high than, you know, having characters that lived in your head now start living in somebody else's head. You know, that is it. So those are the kind of books I want to write. And the trick is you first get in the reader with a plot twist in the very beginning. You know, so here, of course, she has been kidnapped. Now she's in the basement. And the masked gunman is masked. So you don't even know who this person is. So so there are two things going on in your head. One, will Devi be able to escape from this predicament? Two, who is this masked gunman? Why is he holding her hostage? So there's a natural curiosity, and I keep building on that, and I keep ratcheting up the tension.
I think you've nailed it at that, because that's the exact emotion, like I said, that was going on in my head. And like you rightly said, so of course, these are fictional books, but the core of the book has bureaucratic corruption, the real side of India. You talk about the underdogs, you talk about, you know, there's a phrase that's going viral on social media regarding the book, the girl from the gutter. Describing Devi. So, you know, the girl from the gutter. Similarly, I think with Slumdog Millionaire, the same concept had gone about. So you're not only writing 4 different books, you're actually talking about India and how, you know, the strata works and how India is facing so many issues. You're literally addressing that. So did your days in the IFS actually inspire this, or your services somewhere bring about?
No, obviously, you know, the life you live in the IFS is very different. You're kissing the hands of princesses. You're definitely not visiting slums, etc. So that's very different. No, I think what inspires me is really what's happening in our country. And as I always say, you take out Times of India and you read just one day's newspaper, and you would see all kinds of bizarre things happening. You know, a boy born with 2 heads, and, you know, a soldier who was washed away in the flood, and then he returns after 10 years and he finds his wife is remarried, and what's going to happen to him. So all kinds of stuff is going on in India. Because we are a nation of 1.4 billion people, we are a nation of 1.4 billion stories, because everyone has a story and everyone is a hero in their own eyes, so to speak. So that is really what inspires me, you know, what is happening around us. I mean, the fake degree racket is very real now. People are tying it up with the whole NEET controversy. Godman thing is very real. Look at Asaram, look at Rampal, look at Baba Ram Rahim, all these characters. Again, what happens in our hospitals? Why do private hospitals fleece patients? You know, how do the bills get so high, and how do they prescribe tests which are not really needed? So all these things are actually real, and that's why, for me, the inspiration always comes from real life. Of course, then I fictionalize it and I give it a fictional undertone. But the original stuff is all real, and it's just that I don't pick up a particular hospital or a particular godman or a particular fake degree racket. The idea is, yes, these are generic things, and you fictionalize it to such an extent that nobody can pinpoint it that this is exactly what it was.
And most of these books are such thick, multi-layer narratives, and in fact the characterization, especially with the key characters through the books, especially the one that we're talking about right now, Devi is such a powerful character. She's resilient, but at the same time, with the 7 stories that you talk about, you bring out her vulnerability.
Yes.
And especially, without giving away too much, the way the story ends and the person she meets towards the end,
Exactly.
and the way she's transforming her life and the career she chooses at the end. I'm not giving away too much. You have to buy the book to read more. But
But you see, that's why I chose, Natasha, that's why I chose a female character. Because for me, women are much more complex than men. And they look at the world in a very different way than men do. So, I mean, of course, as a male, it was very difficult for me to get inside the head of a woman. But, some people asked me that, what was your training? I said it was being married to my wife for 35 years. I think that was, that was my training, so to speak. And then eventually, men and women, yes, they may think differently, but they react to situations in pretty much similar ways. So I just, for me, the quality of empathy is the most important thing, that you have to just transform yourself into that character and start looking at the world through her eyes, and then write from that perspective. So that's what I do. And with women, you get this both, you get this two in one. You get the strength, the resilience, and you get that vulnerability as well. And that, to me, makes it a much more interesting character than a pure male character.
absolutely. And in fact, the path that Devi chooses throughout her lifespan has been brilliant, one after the other. And the best part about Devi for me is she's not morally right. There are characters where the authors ensure that the character is so morally right. Here, Devi is the most relatable, but at the same time, disturbed character.
No, I won't use the word disturb. I don't think there's any angle of, psychoanalysis being needed for her. No, I think it's just that I think the notion that animates her the most is justice. She wants justice. And to get that justice, she can cut corners, she can take shortcuts also. I mean, that is the thing. And in a sense, at the very beginning, when she loses her parents, she loses her brothers, then she declares that there is no God. There is no God, everything is chance, and take your chances when you get them. So this is really Devi, this encapsulates the entire philosophy of Devi. She believes there is no higher power controlling us. We control our own destiny through our own actions, number one. Number two, everything is chance. Who you meet, what happens to you. Many times you may, wanting to go on a particular path, but suddenly that path diverges and another path comes up out of chance, out of the blue sky altogether. And thirdly, take your chances when you get them. So that is the thing, that she has, that is why she constantly reinvents herself, because she's getting a new chance, she grabs it and then tries to make a better life for herself.
Absolutely. And you've written a female character before, and coincidentally, the female character is named Sapna.
Yes, Sapna Sinha from the Accidental Apprentice. So totally fits in with Sapna Book House.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So with Devi, I would really want to ask you, what was the hardest part of writing this character? Because it's so complex, so vulnerable, at the same time, so beautifully stitched together. And 7 different narratives across 7 different cities and 7 different scenarios. How was Devi as a character for you to write?
No, obviously it was tough. I mean, I wouldn't say it was an easy. First of all, I had to get her voice. Similarly for my very first novel, my debut novel, Q&A, I wrestled a long time. The whole plot was in my head, but I was just trying to get the right voice for Ram Mohammed Thomas. He's an 18-year-old waiter who has never gone to school, but who has seen life, who has street knowledge as opposed to book knowledge. How would he speak? Because the novel is in the first person. It is Ram Mohammed Thomas speaking to you in his own voice. And I, experimented with lots of things and nothing was working. And then out of the blue, these words came into my head: I have been arrested, full stop, for winning a quiz show. And I knew that is his voice, So similarly for Devi also, I had to experiment a lot with the voice because, again, she's a street smart girl. She's not somebody who's gone to Loyola College or who's gone to Bangalore University. She's someone who's, again, learned from the street. She's streetwise. She's street smart. She's, in a sense, a close cousin of Ram Mohammed Thomas from that sense. But except, as you rightly said, Ram Mohammed Thomas had a very strong moral compass. Devi's moral compass is slightly wonky. I think it goes all over the place, and she grabs her chances whenever she gets them. So it was difficult, yes, certainly. But I think that's also the exhilaration of writing, of creating a character who's morally slightly dubious, and yet who's so compelling that you still root for her, because you understand the idea was to get the reader inside her head as well, and the reader understand where she's coming from, what are the moral dilemmas she was facing, and why whatever she chose, maybe you would also chosen the same thing. It's that kind of a thing. So that is what really makes it so thrilling, makes it so interesting. And, for me as a writer, that's really the payoff. Then that if the reader is also able to get inside the world of Devi and share, her choices, and eventually agrees with those choices. I mean, there's nothing, nothing better for a writer.
And I think with Devi, her only thought process is justice, and justice for everything that she's faced in the past and for her family, what her siblings have faced. So I think that's what drives Devi
Yeah, because
throughout
you
the
see,
book.
I mean, the closest relationships she had was with her two brothers. Parents were laborers, working from site to site. They did not really devote that much time to her. So I think the strongest relationships she had were with her two brothers, and then of course with her dog Sheru. These were the strongest relationships she had, and that's why she also grows up rather wary of of people, especially of men, because she believes that they are just trying to sweet talk you because they want something out of you. I mean, she believes in a very transactional view of the world, but that's because of the kind of experiences she's had. Yes, and to get her to drop her guard is difficult. It happens in the Kerala chapter, as you know. So that was also interesting because she experiences love for the first time, and how a woman like that would experience the first stirrings of love was also interesting to write.
And in fact, sir, with your audience being a global audience, I would like to ask you again, is there a particular reason you've picked India as a country where Devi is residing, and all of these characters and complexities from Indian scenarios? Because your audience is global. So is there a message that you're trying to, of course, not a message, but is there a sort of awareness that you're trying to bring about with the book?
No, so let me make one point very clear. When people say that now, since Slumdog Millionaire has been translated into 47 languages now. I mean, you name a language and it's in that language. So people say that now that you have a global audience, you are always trying to write a global novel. And I tell them that there is no such thing as a global novel. It is a local novel which goes global. And and this fact I first realized when I went on my first book tour to Australia. And I think it was in Adelaide, and a middle-aged woman walks up to me and says, "Mr. Swaroop, your book gave us such a great insight into Indian culture and society." And I was zapped because when I was writing Q&A, I had no idea that I would be giving somebody a peek into Indian society or culture, because I wrote as an insider for insiders. I wrote as an Indian for Indians, a very Indian story. There was no attempt to exoticize India, bring in some yoga, bring in some elephants, bring in some Maharajas and things like that. There was no attempt to do that at all. It was about the seamy underbelly of urban India. But because it was written because it was written with a sense of authenticity, that is why when a foreigner picks up a book about India, then, that foreigner is looking to get a sense of, what makes Indians tick. And that's what I realized later on, that if I'm picking up a book by a Colombian author or by a Chinese author, then maybe I also want to understand a little bit of, what do Colombians think? How does China operate? What is the social structure in China and things like that? So I think that's what really happens. And because, so that's why you must write with a sense of authenticity. And that's why the backdrop looks very real, because, it's based on a lot of research. I have never lived in Kottayam, but, one chapter is set entirely in Kottayam. I had to do a lot of research about Kottayam, and thank God for Google Street Maps now. You can actually see the city and understand what's it all about. Similarly, Punjab, I have never lived in Punjab, but, creating a dera, how does it operate? What is the social ecosystem? What is the economic ecosystem of that? All that you had to do a lot of research. But why I always choose to write about India? Because they say you write best about what you know best. And at the end of the day, I know only my country best. So many people have asked me that, you have been a globe-trotting diplomat, posted in 4 different continents. Why don't you write a sort of global novel in that sense, which moves from place to place, maybe starts off in Cairo, goes to Caracas, comes back to Kolkata, and things like that. But, for me, that would still again become the pure thriller. And that's not what I'm looking for. So as I said, even though in the Foreign Service, I was living abroad for many, many extended years. I think 18 years of my life I spent outside India. But yet I always felt connected to India. And that's why I always wanted to write about India. And also, in a way, my training as a diplomat, what were we doing as a diplomat? As a diplomat, I was always interpreting India for a foreign audience. When I was posted in America, they invited me to a school. They wanted to know, why do women wear bindi, why are cows worshipped in India and things like that. So I'm interpreting India for a foreign audience. So similarly, through my books, I'm interpreting India and rendering the complexity of India slightly more accessible by the medium of these multi-layered narratives, where, if I'm just writing about, let's say, readers who come to the Sapna bookstore, it will be a very unidimensional narrative, because, most of your readers would be middle class, upper middle class people, who probably follow a very similar lifestyle. But this way, by going from place to place, by looking at the social structures in each of these places, you are trying to make a grab at a slightly more of the complexity and diversity of India than you would get through a unidimensional narrative.
Absolutely, sir. In fact, with all the 7 stories, it almost felt like we're traveling with Devi.
It's like a Bharat Darshan.
Yes, in fact, every little nuance that you rightly described has been so beautifully written. You feel like you're in that city, on that road, living the life that Devi is living, and it's so real. It's not. It really didn't give us a sense that you've been away from India for so long. It felt like you've been here, and those are as real as it gets.
So there are 2 reasons for that. One is, Devi is narrating her stories to her abductor.
Yes.
So it has the immediacy and impact of an oral account. When somebody is telling a story, there are 2 or 3 ways of telling a story. You can tell a story through a third person narrative, where you are removed from it. Devi was walking, Devi was doing this, Devi. But Devi is saying, I was doing this. So you get into the action straight away. And then I have used this device where what she's narrating is in the flashback, and then you come in the real time, in that dungeon
happening.
and that online auction that is happening there. So the idea was this constant interplay between her past and her present, the dynamic between that. And because it's a first person narrative, obviously my whole intention was to immerse you into that narrative. You become part of Devi's world. You start looking at the world through her eyes, and follow her journey and fall in love with that journey.
Absolutely. Sir, another question that I discovered while I was reading the book was purely from a literature standpoint, purely from a writing technique standpoint. The book is so fast paced. It's heavily plot driven. I think probably, if I can say, every page has some element of
Yes.
a plot going on. It's not a normal story that you're writing. It's very, very heavily plot driven right until the end. But at the same time, you bring about so much depth to each character. You bring about so much information about how society functions. You bring about societal themes. How did you balance the 2? I'm sure it must be.
So that's the tough part, really, because you don't want the thriller element to completely overshadow the social commentary, and you don't want the social commentary to start feeling like a pontification, somebody just a Baba explaining the whole world to you and saying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So the thing is, I adopt a light touch. Even when I'm talking about serious issues, the tone always remains slightly light, so that the idea is I never want my books to become polemical, or pontificatory, where I'm trying to preach to the reader that, look, this is the problem in Indian society, this is the problem in Indian society. That's not the idea. The idea is organically, through that thriller-driven plot, you should be able to look at these issues. But and that's why plotting becomes very important. I mean, all 4 of my books are very meticulously structured in that sense, because you see, there is a surprise at the end, as you yourself got that surprise. And in order for that surprise to feel real, it has to be something which is organic, which is embedded, and yet in such a way that you don't pick up those clues. The clues are there, but you don't pick up those clues, and that's the art of the writer, that you try to embed it in such a way that, and that's what every mystery writer tries to do, that the detective should have the same clues and the reader should have the same clues. And yet, you should be surprised by the detective's detection at the end, because you have not been able to pick up those clues. I mean, I was always able to pick up those clues, except a couple of books where the writer himself turns out to be the murderer and things like that, which is always, the oldest trick in the book, so to speak. But that's the whole idea, that, through the plot, you are able to, first of all, immerse yourself in the narrative, because you want to find out what happens next. And yet, at the same time, the social commentary is also something that makes you think a bit more deeply than just on the surface of the plot.
And, sir, the most exciting part of all of this is you come from Allahabad, a family of lawyers. You studied psychology, modern history, and philosophy. And along with this, you've had a very solid career of 35 years in diplomatic services. And yet, when you pointed it out that you have a gap of 21 years, but when I first read your book to when I read your book now, 21 years later, your writing technique and style almost remains the same. It's like a continuity, and this is a compliment rather, that your writing technique seamlessly remains the same despite this not being your preliminary profession and having such a gap. How do you manage to do that?
So that is a real compliment because, you know, just as an artist, signature style should be visible on every canvas. Similarly, you know, when you acquire a devoted following of readers, then those readers want to be able to spot your style in whatever you write. So yes, I think when I first wrote, you know, I approached it from a perspective of a reader. I had never been to a creative writing workshop. I never even had English literature as my subject. So I'm really a self-taught writer, so to speak. You know, and I acquired the craft of writing mainly from the craft of reading. But by reading, I could understand what is good writing and what is bad writing. And then subconsciously, you try to emulate the good writers. And then I realized you cannot do that. You can copy Arundhati Roy for maybe one paragraph. You cannot copy Arundhati Roy for, you know, an entire novel. You have to discover your own voice. And as I said, that was the hardest. But once those words came to me, I have been arrested for winning a quiz show. I knew I had Ram Mohammed Thomas's voice. And then I could write in that voice. So for me, that is the key really. And then the way I use my sentences, I always try to ensure that the same two words are never repeated within 7 or 8 lines. For me, those things, the alliteration, you know, those literary little devices are important to me as a writer. You know, I'm a perfectionist in that sense. And I'm glad that, you know, I have maintained a consistent style, even though the plots are very, very different in each of them. But there is a structure and there is a certain style which comes through. And that's really what I aim for as a writer, that, you know, the reader should be able to spot this is a Vikas Swarup novel.
Having been a literature student myself, it really comes through, sir. And which is why I said, having studied all these 4 books myself and having read them, it really, like, you can probably take away the cover and hand over the novel to a reader, and they will know that this is from the same writer.
Well, as I said, that's the ultimate compliment. So thank you, Natasha, for that.
So has there been a certain amount of pressure on you in terms of writing after the success of Slumdog Millionaire? You know, each book that you come out with has to have, fortunately, the other 3 books have had a backing. Slumdog Millionaire, there's a Hotstar TV series. The third one's I think it's in...
The third one will also either become a web series or a film. It's already been optioned. And let's see what happens. I think they're looking at a director at the moment for that. And of course, for this one also, I'm already being chased.
Oh, wow.
Right now, as a Hollywood company has taken an option till September. Then somebody from South Africa is interested. 4 producers who have links to Netflix are after my life. So I'm just trying to keep them at bay at the moment.
Wow.
Because I'm in no hurry that, you know, within a month of my book's arrival, it has to transform into a web series. I mean, I met Kai Bird at the JLF this year. He's the guy who wrote Oppenheimer. And I asked him, I said, Kai, how did it happen? And he says, would you believe it? I wrote this book 18 years ago. And only 2 years ago, I got a call from Christopher Nolan that I want to make a movie based on your book. So, you know, sometimes it takes a long time for a book to really mature into a film. For me, the important thing is, you know, the soul of the novel has to be preserved, and it has to be a director who brings a certain vision to the project. It's not that, you know, you throw money at me and I'll say, okay, take this and do whatever you want with it. For me, it's important that the integrity of the novel should be retained. And many people have said that this is like ready-made for a web series, you know, because the 7 lives, if you want 2 seasons, you can make it 14 lives. If you want 1 season, you make it 7 lives. So it can transition quite seamlessly.
Absolutely. To all those present here and to all those who have recently just come in, this book is something that you must read, and it will make you put down everything that you have around you. As a reader, usually you try to juggle a couple of books, or you juggle work with a book, or you read the book in phases. This one, I assure you, will make you want to sit down, send a sick leave email to your boss, and finish the book through and through. trust me on this. Coincidentally, we have a very special discount going on at the same time. Please do pick up your copies. It's a personal recommendation from my side as a reader. Not only because I'm speaking to you, sir, but genuinely, it's a really good book.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Really, you made my day.
So, if you could tell the audience something different about the book. Of course, we've spoken about it in detail without giving away too much. There's a little bit of conversation on social media over the internet, and of course, there's the black blurb. But apart from that, if you were to give away one thing, one key aspect of why they should be picking up the book today and reading it.
No, I think you've been the best marketer of the book. You know, it will keep you at the edge of your seat. It will, of course, immerse you into the world of Devi, and you know, and especially for female readers, you know, I mean, they would really, I think, enjoy seeing whether a male writer can get into the psyche of a woman or not. I think that will be an interesting challenge. And you wanted to know an interesting insight. I think the interesting insight is the cover itself. So, you know, what happened was, when this book was being published, of course, the typesetting and everything had happened, and we were just looking around for a cover. What would be a good cover to go with this? And they had hired a very good designer who was showing me a lot of designs, but you know, it was just not clicking, because you know, this is a very different book. As you said, this is not a cookie cutter book that you normally get. And the 7 lives, how do you capture those 7 lives? Should she be a goddess with 7 arms, each holding a different thing or whatever? I mean, we were experimenting with a lot of things, and nothing was working. And then the publisher, he just said, look, when we were first pitching it to our US and UK head offices, then we had just used a stock image from somewhere. Okay. So should we have a look at that image? Because prior to this, we were all experimenting. Should there be a gun? Should there be a syringe because she's a nurse at one point? Should there be blood? Should the 7 be written like a number? You know, I mean, all these things were happening and nothing was clicking. And then they showed me this cover. You know, I mean, of course, it was just this picture. And I said, you know, this grabs me at least because, you know, it's very graphic. And what I liked about this was that on the one hand, there is terror. You know, a woman's face has been grabbed, you know, by a masked thing. And yet you see her eyes and you see determination. You don't see fear. You don't see that she's being cowed down. So I said, you know, to me, this appeals to me. And then, of course, the story started of how do we get this, because then they discovered that this cover was actually designed by a lady called Enver Fatih Akgun, who's a Turkish person. She's a Turkish graphic designer. And this was an actual, so probably she's Turkish, this girl. And then she wanted money in Bitcoin and this, that, the other. You know, it was a whole this thing. How do you even get? So I didn't get into that. You know, my publishers did, but finally they were able to secure the rights. And that's how we got this amazing cover, because to me, it's a very unique cover, actually.
It's very interesting, and it immediately makes you want to pick up the book.
Yes, either it makes you want to pick up the book, or you say, oh my God, what am I getting into? You know? I mean, as I said, this is not a cover that leaves you at a halfway house stage. You either want it or you are scared to touch it.
Yes. Yeah. Probably the last question of the evening from my side before I open the floor to audience. In a scenario where AI is taking up a lot of space, in a scenario where books are taking a backseat, in a scenario where globalization is at its peak, where we see so many books from across the world, Korean culture, Japanese culture. There are books from across the world actually being floated around.
And you probably have a manga section as well.
Absolutely. Here. In fact, we do have a whole section of manga right now. And that's the most fast-moving book at the store. So in this scenario, what do you think is the future of storytelling, especially given how technology is coming into the scenario? Authenticity, storytelling. If you could give me your take on this.
I think that's a brilliant question, Natasha, because really these are the issues that you as a bookseller would be confronted with. I as a writer am grappling with it, because AI, the way it has advanced and so suddenly has taken us all by surprise. I mean, AI has been there for many years, maybe decades, but the retail version came with ChatGPT. And we were all amazed at the fluency with which it is generating responses. The grammar and syntax is right. I mean, Yuval Noah Harari has said that AI has cracked the operating system of humanity, that is language, and that is true, because our operating system is language. That's how we interact with each other. And once you crack language, then anything which uses language becomes fair game for that AI. And that's why books are all about language. It's about the interplay of words, the sequencing of words. That's really what makes, I mean, a fiction book is ordered imagination. You give an order to your imagination, put it down in words, and you have the book. So now, and I was just reading Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Nearer. And Ray Kurzweil, who's really a great thinker and one of the founders of the internet, he says by 2029, we are in 2024, 5 years down the line, we will have artificial general intelligence, which means the AI robot of the science fiction films, the sentient robot would be a reality. And that robot, that AI, would have read every book ever published. It would have read every screenplay ever written. And from there, it can find out which books did well, which screenplays did well, and then maybe it can pick out elements which made that book a bestseller, made that film a super hit. And then from that perspective, craft something out of the blue completely. My own sense is in 5 years' time, if not earlier, human creativity and machine creativity would be indistinguishable. You would not be able to tell the difference that this was written by AI or this was written by a human. And that raises a lot of ethical questions as well. Is machine creativity real creativity, or only human creativity is real creativity? I don't know, because maybe because the machine would have gone through the entire algorithms of plots, etc., it can come out with some kind of plotting device which we humans have not even thought of. Right now, you ask ChatGPT, you give me a killer plot line, something unexpected twist, it comes up with very routine, have the murderer use an ice pick and the ice melts. Come on, this has been there, done that, a long time ago. So right now, I think ChatGPT and other AI instruments are at that level where, they are creating things which are okay, which can still get published, but nothing path breaking, not something which could win a Pulitzer Prize or a Booker Prize. But as I said, give it time. And once this artificial general intelligence comes. So I think that's the first question, that, what's going to be. The second question is itself the future of book reading. Because you see, this novel opens with this line: in life, the most valuable thing is not money, it is attention. And there's a reason why I chose that line, because we are now in the attention-based economy. And if you look at the progression of how humanity has progressed, at one time we had an agriculture economy, and what was the most valuable thing? Land. Then from agriculture we went to manufacturing, and what became the most valuable commodity? Labor, because for manufacturing you needed labor. And then from manufacturing we went to the information economy, and what became the most valuable commodity? Information. But now what we see is we have too much information. In fact, we are inundated with information. So now what is the scarcest thing in the world? It is attention. How do you get somebody's attention? And you as a bookseller, I think, are in that unique situation. You and Mr. Mehta, you have to now, when a reader comes in, he now sees 10,000, 100,000 books here. He has no clue what to read, what not to read, especially if he does not have a specific writer in mind. And then he comes to you and he asks you, what do I read? And then you have to tell him what he reads. So that's what I'm saying. Attention spans have become shorter. Attention itself has become in such a short supply that, and the last thing is, books themselves have been commodified. When I was growing up, books had a very exalted place. You cannot allow a book to touch the floor. Immediately pick it up and you do this, because this is Vidya. And you cannot allow Vidya to fall down to the floor. But now books are competing with the Reebok sneaker. Should I buy this? This is $4.99. Reebok sneaker is $7.99. I have 800 rupees with me. What do I buy? So but it's a reality that books are no longer seen as carriers of civilizational legacy, as the expressions of the finest minds and things like that. Books are seen as just another thing, and because books are now getting translated into other mediums, into an audiobook, radio play, web series, etc. Now you even have that response that, okay, you don't want to read a very heavy-duty book, at least read *Sapiens*. No, I believe Discovery Channel is bringing out a series on that, so I'll watch that. So you don't want, as I said, the image is drowning out the word. I mean, it's a reality. And these are, as I said, as society evolves, these are things that we have to grapple with. I still feel that, books are the last bastion of analog. These kinds of books, imagine the LP record has gone, the DVD player has gone, the cassette tape has gone, the LP record the gramophone is gone, because they were all overtaken by digital. But the Gutenberg press product, which Gutenberg press came 550 years ago, this is the last vestige of that. This and the grandfather clock, which has the pendulum, and which still runs on, an analog version. These two, like that clock there. So they are still there. But how long will they remain? I don't know, because people are now raising ethical questions around this whole production of books. That how many trees are cut down to produce one book. And then the cost of inventory, the cost of transportation. Because with digital, on my iPad, I can have 5,000 books. And I don't blink an eyelid. It just not even takes 1 terabyte. It takes, maybe 300 MB or something like that. Because EPUB is about 1 MB or so. That's about it. So I think as society evolves, as humanity evolves, we will have new ways of reading, we will have new ways of writing, and we will have new kinds of books themselves. In Japan, where I was posted, they had evolved this cell phone novel, because many people in Japan do, they spend a lot of time in commuting, from going from their house to their office and then back. And during the commute, they have one hand is holding up the strap or whatever, but the other hand is free. And that's why they developed the cell phone novel, which on your cell phone, it will come in a bite size, this thing. So you just, with your thumb, you keep doing this and you keep scrolling through. And it is written in a way to fit your phone screen. So again, that's a new way, and the stories themselves are different, because obviously, 800-page novel is not going to fit into your cell phone. So that's what I'm saying, that, things evolve. I mean, the graphic novels, nobody heard of graphic novels 30, 40 years ago, but now they are all the rage. Yeah, exactly. So that was, I think we have to understand that. But the point is, books may evolve, reading may evolve, but storytelling will always remain in fashion, because, we make sense of our world through the stories we listen and the stories we tell. And that's why storytellers will always be important, regardless of, whether it is, machines doling out stuff or whatever. At the end of the day, they are going to be, we will make sense of the world only through stories. So I think storytelling will remain, but the forms of storytelling and the storytellers themselves may change.
And so while the world might change, I hope that storytellers like you continue writing, because that's what the world needs. And thank you so much for taking India to the world. I think that's a credit that I definitely must give you. You've taken India to the world.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Yes, but I want now the world to come to India as well. Yes, I think.
That's the aim. And thank you so much for being here. I'm now opening the floor to audience questions.
And yeah, so the street smart characters that you create so convincingly and with so much of depth, coming from a place of privilege where you've spent 18 years out of the country, how do you do it?
No, again, I think I answered when I said that for me, the thing is the quality of empathy. That you just have to put yourself in the mind of that character. Like Ram Mohammed Thomas, when I was creating Ram Mohammed Thomas, or when I was creating the character of a tribal from the Andaman Islands who comes to mainland India in search of a relic. I mean, this tribal, Ram Mohammed Thomas is still a street kid. You have seen street kids, how they would behave. This guy from the Andaman Islands has never seen a shopping mall. He has never seen a train. How the hell will he react when he sees the modern lights of humanity? Of civilization. So the trick for me is really, you have to take that leap of faith. And you have to say, okay, I am Eketi. I am Ram Mohammed Thomas. I do not know where my next meal is going to come from. I do not know whether I have a roof over my head or my house will be bulldozed day after tomorrow. How does the world look to me? and then you write really from that perspective. Because, there is a chapter, if you have not read the book, it's called How to Write a Bestseller. And that's really a riff on this, that there's a very rich banker woman who runs a bank, and she wants to become the next Vikas Swaroop. She wants to write the next Slumdog Millionaire, but she cannot visit a slum because she's a banker, and anybody sees her in a slum, a photo is taken, her career is over. So what does she do? She gets hold of Devi, who's a slum girl, and transplants her into her house, and then tries to mine her mind for her novel. That she will tell me how was living in a slum like, what does a slum girl think, etc. But there also the question is that authentic? Can you really get inside the mind of another person? Because at the end of the day, you only know yourself. And sometimes you don't even know yourself that well, as psychoanalysis has said, schizophrenia and what kind of mental disorders might be there in a person as well. So for a writer, see, all writing is at the end appropriation. You are appropriating characters that do not belong to you. But as long as you are not appropriating a real character, you are creating that character, then in that appropriation you are justified, because you say, okay, at the end of the day, this is my character, and my character will look at the world in this way. And the real trick is whether the reader believes in that background that you have created for that character or not. That is the real craft of writing. Because you see, the difference between going to a film and reading a book is this. In a film, you take for granted the willing suspension of disbelief. That, a lot of nonsense stuff, out of the world stuff will happen. Salman Khan will kill 35 people in one go, and no bullet will graze him. I mean, you take it for granted that this is a film you have come to enjoy. But in a book, the moment you feel that, what this character is doing is unbelievable, unless you're writing magical realism or something like that, which is a different genre, and there also you take for granted. Then you will just give up the book. You'll just say, this is nonsense. This man cannot write a woman. There's no way a street girl will behave like this. There is no way she would speak like this. There is no way Delhi is like this. To hell with this, I'm not reading this book any longer. So that is why creating that authentic backdrop against which the emotions play out becomes very, very important. Because at the end of the day, emotions are the same. Your man, woman, child, whatever, emotions are the same. Love, hate, revenge, pity, all these emotions are the same. It's just that how they are generated, somebody would feel love at this level, somebody will feel hate at this level. That may be different, but the emotions are the same. And whether you are rich or whether you are poor, whether you are, North American or you are brown South Asian, whatever it is, emotions are the same. We all feel hatred, revenge, love, pity, respect, all these emotions. Emotions are, are what makes us human. So that is why getting under the skin of those characters does not, for me, is not very difficult, because eventually I'm grappling with their emotions. And their emotions would be the way I would react, when I'm hit or when something bad happens to me. How would I react? So for me, that is the kick. But you have to take that leap of faith and put yourself in the frame of that character, the character that you have created. I mean, one question was asked of me in the book launch in Delhi, that you say there is no God, everything is chance, and take your chances when you get them. So you don't believe in God. I said, that's not me, that's my character speaking. I said, if you look at the previous book, The Accidental Apprentice, Sapna Sinha is the most God-fearing person. She goes to the Hanuman temple in Connaught Place every Friday, and that's where she's accosted by that billionaire who wants to make her the CEO of his company. So I said, it's never, don't ever think that, all books are autobiographical. The writer is basically putting out his own philosophies into, many writers do that. I'm not one of them. No, as I answered, I think you came in a bit late. I said, what inspires me is everyday life in India. What happens around you. Because look, subconsciously, you do not write in a vacuum. Even, unless you are writing about planet X13b, which is 18 light years away or something like that, far removed from whatever is happening here, then it's a different matter. But if you're writing about contemporary India, then what is happening in contemporary India is bound to filter in through some way or the other. But it is not as if that I set out that I say, okay, let's pick 5 problems that India is facing and let's set a novel around it. No, for me, it's all organic. Once I have conceptualized that Devi is a girl from the gutters, who was born in a village 300 kilometers away, father and mother moved to the city in search of employment, then it very logically follows. And that's why if you look at all the 7 lives, in a sense, I am foreshadowing the next life by the clues that I leave behind, because she's working, with a eunuch who follows a particular godman. That's why when she escapes the juvenile home, she goes to that godman's ashram. In the godman's ashram, there's a Keralite who's a devotee. So when she goes to Kerala, she sees his bookstore and, finds a place of refuge. Similarly, she befriends a nurse, and that nurse cannot get admission into a medical college because the medical college is a Christian medical college. So she tries to become a Christian. So the idea is that, everything should flow logically. There should be no that, oh, you have just parachuted, you wanted to write about LFP, so you parachuted her into LFP. I never want the reader to feel that, ये सोच रहे थे web series बनाएंगे, LFP अच्छा लगेगा, थोड़ा पंजाब डाल दो, it should never feel like that.
Okay, my question is, you said that you've been out of India for such a long time, and still you've had this connect with India, right? Though you were staying abroad for a long time.
Correct.
How did that happen?
Because you see, that's the difference. If you look at a lot of diaspora fiction of people written by people of Indian origin who are now American citizens or British citizens or German citizens or Danish citizens or whatever, you see many of them, the themes of their novels are about identity and displacement. And also the India that they represent. If you look at Rohinton Mistri's books, they are the India of the 1970s, because that is when he was living in India, and that is the only India he knows. Now he visits India as a tourist, and he does not get that sense of, what is making modern India tick. But because I was a government servant, posted abroad because of my official duties, I always felt an Indian. I mean, I was an Indian at heart. And that's why for me, it was never that, oh, I'm also visiting India as a tourist, and, the machhar and makhi, and then I go back to salubrious climes in America or whatever. No, in fact, my wife and I were very, very clear that even our children should not be too far away from India for an extended period of time, and that they should only visit India as tourists, because they have to have a sense of what it means to be an Indian. Otherwise, there'll be an identity crisis. I mean, you cannot just call yourself a global citizen, because then you are neither Gharka na Ghatka, you're neither here nor there. And that's why, it was very clear that after 6 years, you have to be back in India, so that, the children can get an immersion into what it means to be an Indian. And that's why I always had that sense of what it means to be an Indian. Plus, we had newspapers coming in, cable television. When I first joined the Foreign Service, there was no cable television, but within a few years, cable television came. And that was what we used to watch, what is happening in India. So I always felt connected to India. And that's why when I set out to write something, I said, I will write about India only. I mean, because that came the most naturally to me. Yes. Yes, because it's also being recorded for an online audience.
Okay, I just have like 2 questions. One related to the character. Even though she's a girl and she's obviously not your age,
Yes,
and
she's
there
25, I'm
there is a
63.
gap of a demographic gap. How do you fill that with your book? Because I mean, I know she's from a slum and all that, and she doesn't have that much of exposure as a city girl would probably have, but there is a demographic gap. How do you fill that?
So again, research, try, like even when I'm traveling in a metro, I'm observing, what the young people are doing. And that's when I discovered that everybody's into reels these days. I had no idea what reels were. In fact, my last book, when it came out, there was no Instagram. And now my thing is flooded with Instagram. And I'm noticing that, and a lot of the stuff is happening is not organic. It is created. I mean, why is every second person trying to copy the dance steps of Tauba Tauba? Obviously, it's not as if the suddenly sabke dimag mein aa gaya Tauba Tauba. Obviously, the Tauba Tauba marketing team has said, bhai, please, aap Tauba Tauba steps kariye, and this is a reward or something like that. That's really what's happening. So the thing is to observe, because again, as a not even a middle-aged, post-middle-aged person, to get inside the mind of a young person, what do they think? But as I answered to this lady, at the end of the day, the emotions remain the same. A young person will also react violently, rage, hate, whatever. Those emotions will remain the same. It's just that, the technology that you will use. And that is why, if you see, this book is also a coming-of-age story where the technology also evolves. Look at the kind of phone her brother was using, a Nokia. and then she graduates to an Moto, and then to an iPhone, and things like that. So I was very conscious of which year I'm writing, what is the current technology of that particular year, and get into that. But eventually, you have to take, as I said, the leap of faith, and just imagine the world from the eyes of a young person. You cannot completely, get into that world, but to the extent that you can, think that this is how young persons would be behaving or doing. And nobody has so far complained that, I have, this looks like a very dated kind of a book.
Just another question. As a writer myself, so I always face this writer's block kind of a thing where you don't know how the story progresses.
Right.
So after a 11 years gap, did you ever face such writer's block challenges?
So my interpretation of writer's block is as follows. Writer's block is not that you have no ideas, because you always have ideas. Come on, how can you not have ideas? Writer's block is you have, done maybe 1/3 or 2/3 of the novel, and the characters that you have created have now become people. And now those characters are speaking to you and telling you, ma'am, now you are asking me to do this. I cannot do this because this is not what I am. That is, for me, that is what writer's block is. That the characters are telling you that, Mr. Swaroop, you have taken some wrong turn somewhere, because this does not fit into my profile. This is not, yes, you are a puppet master and we are puppets and you can, kill us off tomorrow or, send us to jail tomorrow, but we are not going to do that. Sorry, no can do. And that's when you have to take a step back and say, where did I go wrong? Why is this character no longer, doing what I'm asking it to do? Or because you are feeling that tension inside you, that no, it's not feeling authentic, it's not feeling right. This is not how the way this character would behave. And that's when you have to take that step back and then carefully analyze. Maybe you took that left turn, which you shouldn't have taken. You should have taken a right turn, or you should have gone straight. And for me, that is what writer's block is, because I'm never short of ideas. In fact, I never start a novel unless I have the novel completed in my head. Because for me, I'm not a stream of consciousness writer. Let's start writing whatever comes into my head. It will develop on its own. Yes, those kinds of novels can also be written. And there are many novelists who do that, who start with just a basic idea. It will be about a middle-aged woman who has just lost her husband. And then let's see what happens. Because a lot of things develop in the process of writing. But you see, in all my novels, as Natasha said, there is a punchline at the end. There's a surprise at the end. And when you want to surprise the reader, then you cannot write stream of consciousness, because then that surprise cannot be embedded. So that is why the structure becomes important for me. And that's why, for me, the plotting becomes important. Having said that, that does not mean that, my thing also does not change. I think the ending got slightly modified in this one as well. I mean, at one point, there was a certain person who was kidnapping her. And then later on, I decided that, no, that person does not work. This person works, So that is something, every writer should do, constantly go back and see what works best for the novel. Because at one point, you have to give up and say, this is done. Because some people say, I met Nadeem Aslam. He says, because I take 18 years to write my novels. I said, why? He says, for every character, I have to create a 500-page backstory. And I have to know which underwear he wears, which supermarket he goes to, even though it does not come into the novel. I said, I am not like that at all. If a character is not really, central, why do I need the backstory? Anything which happens off-screen should remain off-screen. I am only interested in what the reader gets to see. And then if the reader is not interested in, whether she wears underwire bra or not, I mean, I'm not interested in that. So for me, that's the key. But there are some writers who are very, very meticulous in that matter. They create a backstory of every character, etc. Well, they are writers and they are writers. I tend to write very fast, and what generally gets published is my first draft. I do not do rewriting. No, because as I said, I write after it has germinated completely in my head. So it's not as if that I have just started writing, okay, the idea has come to me, let's put it down on paper. No, I let the whole plot germinate in my head, do the complete arcs of the character. Because in a novel, that is the most important thing. Your character has to evolve. That's the difference between a novel and a short story. A short story has a point. A novel has a plot. And the plot means your character cannot be the same at the beginning as he or she is at the end. The character has to evolve. And that evolution of that character is the entire strength of that novel. Where does she go from A to B to C? And only once I have fleshed that out, then I do my research. and then I start writing. And that's why, once what I write, yes, I have that Ernest Hemingway's thing, bullshit detector. You write, and then the next day you reread what you have written. Because you see, when you write it and you read it immediately, you have the memory of having written it. And of course, when you have the memory, you would say, why would I write crap? But only when you read it as a reader and you don't have the memory of immediately having written it, then you can evaluate and you say, this is bullshit. What was I smoking? What was I thinking? Kato isko, bakwas hai, and do it fresh. So that's the key for me.
Thank you, sir.
Uh,
So for those of you who don't know, this is Mr. Aditya Jha. If you have seen a very famous animation film from India, it was called Delhi Safari, which had Govinda and a whole lot of top actors, voicing it was about a group of animals. There's a monkey and there's a bear and whatnot, and they go on a safari, and he's the one who produced it. And he and I collaborated on a sequel to that, which was to be called Beijing Safari. Yeah.
Wouldn't have missed this. So, because I wanted to ask about the discipline of writing. Yeah, does it come naturally to you, or you have cultivated it? You have your process.
Yeah, so the discipline part, did not come naturally to me because I was in a full-time day job. And for me, the, job always came first. So even if I'm in the midst of a very, very intense chapter, if I have to attend the Myanmar National Day, I have to go and attend the Myanmar National Day. I will not goof off saying, chodo, nobody will notice my absence there. As High Commissioner of India to Canada, that is an obligation. I have to do that obligation. So it's only after retirement, but then the thing was, for me, the discipline used to come that I used to write early in the mornings and mainly on weekends. So for me, the golden hour is 5:30 a.m. to about 9 a.m. because I can only write when the world is quiet, when my phone is not ringing, when I have no deadline pressures. I have to be at peace with myself and with the world for me to write. So I might have been at peace with myself in 2021, but I was not at peace with the world because COVID was happening and I could not write. So the discipline part is that once I know that I have to finish this novel, then I have to get up every day at 5:30. In fact, it's like a DNA thing now. It's part of my DNA. I go to sleep at around 9:30. I'm not a late night bird. I don't, wake up till 11 o'clock or whatever. I just go to sleep at 9:30, wake up at 5:30, and that 5:30 to 9 is when I am the most productive, because as the day progresses, my writing just drops off. I just, because then the world has caught up with me. Right. My wife is saying, we have to get the AO Smith geyser repaired. We have to get this done. We have to get that done. And then
there's WhatsApp.
Yeah, and then the WhatsApp. Yeah, exactly. There's so many distractions also. Right. But the golden hours, those 5:30 to 9, that's when I get, most of my work done. And as I said, when I write pretty fast. So then if I'm doing, and then also, yes, as you get deeper into the novel and, those characters have become real people and they are constantly speaking to you, then there is a sense of urgency also. Ki ab isko finish karna hai. Now we have to finish it. But that is why I have to really watch out, because sometimes in the urge to finish it, your writing level drops off. And then when you reread it, you say, the first part, had a lot of emotional intensity. This looks a bit patchy. And for me, as I said, I'm a perfectionist in that. I have to ensure that, it feels as good as the first part. No part should feel that, this was written when he was relaxed, this was written when he was angry, and things like that. That's important. But then eventually you have to let go that how much can you improve it? That way, every time, you read something, you'll say, maybe this word is not looking good, that word is not looking. How much will you improve it? At one point, you have to say, this is done. As far as I'm concerned, this is the best I could do at this particular point in time. Yes, maybe if I write it 3 years later, I could have improved it. But, I don't want that level of perfection. This is good enough. I'm sending this out. Yeah, you have to. I mean, there are some artists also who cannot finish a canvas, who are constantly fiddling with it. Ek brush stroke yahan dal do, this, do that. But eventually you have to, at the end of the day, it's like a baby you are sending out into the world. And, you want that baby to be as good looking, as perfect as you can, wearing the best clothes and whatnot. But beyond a point, there will be a better baby somewhere else, and you have to just let go of that baby. I think that's the way it operates. Yes, it does. I mean, I still keep getting this thing from readers that, Mr. Sarup, I have a big argument with my friend on page 181. What do you mean by this? And I said, I'm sorry, I cannot answer that for you because now it's no longer my book. It is your book and your friend's book. And maybe he's also right, maybe you're right. But the worst was I got a message from somebody who had read 6 suspects. And he says, Mr. Sarup, I still don't know who was the murderer. I said, yeah, then I cannot help you because then seriously, I cannot help you. I mean, in the sense, short of saying, I am the murderer, my name is so and so, and I murdered, I mean, I've given you enough clues. If you still can't figure it out, then as I said, your IQ level is not worth reading books. I think, you have to give it up. Yes.
Hello, I'm very sorry I came very late here. I was stuck in the Bangalore traffic. Uh, so as an author myself, I have a book coming up in a few days.
Congratulations.
So thank you, sir. So my question actually is, so I was a teacher. I need to give, I'm sorry, I'm taking time. I need to give the background to come to the
I have all
question.
the time if you have time. Yeah.
So I have been a teacher for the past 10 years, and one fine day I decided that sab kuch chhod ke I'll sit at home because I've
Give up
been
your teaching job and become a
I
full-time
gave
writer.
up. Yeah.
Okay, wow. Okay.
So something gutsy is not in my personality, but I somehow decided to do that. Because I've been writing since I was in 8th, 9th standard, and I wanted to make this, into my career. Actually, so the question here is that I started writing this book seriously since April, May of this year.
Okay.
And there have been times where, I've been going through the imposter syndrome, where
The
I
imposter
feel,
syndrome.
where I feel that I'm not good enough to write the book.
Okay.
So my question is it just people like me, or have you also faced that? And
No,
if you have, how do you,
I think every writer faces that. When you're writing, you are constantly thinking, is this the crappiest book ever written? Will this disappear without a trace? Will people say, Mr. Sarup, please stop writing? What are you doing? Till, as I said, you kill those doubts and you reach what I call the point of no return. That no, I think this is a great book. This is a new way of telling a story. This is a fantastic story, and I'm writing this story to hell with the rest of the world. This book is being finished. So that self-doubt is always there in every writer, I think.
Yeah. So though
Even
I know,
writers who say that no, we write very confidently are lying. I think every writer goes through that process of self-doubt because which is very normal. Because at the end of the day, a book is something that you're putting out into the world. You are opening yourself up for criticism.
Yes.
That people are going to comment on that book. And someone may like it, someone may hate it, someone may say, Mr. Sarup, never write again. And you have to take that into your stride because, as I said, at the end of the day, it is their book. So the imposter syndrome is not something you need to worry about. The key for me is it something that only you could have written? Is it something derivative? Oh, I read a book, I liked it, I know I'm going to write a similar book. Then it is not your book. It is that person's book which you are trying to copy and trying to hide by changing the location, this, that, the other. But eventually, it's that story which you are telling, and that means that is not an authentic story coming out of your own mind. But if it is something that is totally organic, unique to you, only you can tell that story, then tell it by all means. But important thing is the peer review, because all of us think that we have written the greatest thing imaginable. Why would we write it if it was crap? And we ourselves are not the best judges because, as I said, we have the memory of having written it. So the thing is, and your parents are also not the best judges. Your brother is not the best judge because naturally, why the hell would he put down his sister? He'll say, "नहीं, बहुत ही बढ़िया लिखा है, तो Nobel Prize के लिए जाएगी." So show it to somebody who can give you objective advice. And say, yes, you may not like it, but look, this is not going anywhere. I don't think this is a story worth telling, or whatever it is. And then don't accept that advice. Show it to another person. And if that person says, no, this was good, I think it was good, then okay, now it's 50-50, then show it to a third person. But if that person also says this is not working, and show it to a third person, and that person also says it's not working, then maybe something is wrong with that book. So objective advice is very, very important. Because, without that objective advice, we ourselves, especially first-time writers, we cannot really judge how good or bad it is.
Also, one thing that I wanted to add is, since you mentioned Six Suspects, it's a beautiful book. It was, I mean, unput downable. I finished it in one stretch. I don't know,
My God,
one
it's
stretch.
400 pages plus.
So I think I sat overnight, because I tend to do that. Through the day I work, and then I feel like I've not given myself enough time. So then through the night I do what I like. So I finished that book in one stretch. I think I sat at around 10 in the night,
My God.
and I was able to finish in 6 hours. Beautiful book. I couldn't put it down. So
Yeah, it was very
thank
difficult
you.
to write. It was I think it has been the most challenging book that I have written so far, because, you know, these books are easy to write because it's just one character, Devi, you get inside that head and you get her voice. And then it's child's play. Then you just write after you have done your research. But Six Suspects, you are writing a polyphonic narrative in the voices of 6 different people. Yes. And in 6 different styles. One is a third person narrative, one is a first person narrative, one is a diary, one is a telephone transcript entirely. Can you imagine how difficult it is to convey sense through a telephone transcript? Because you cannot say he was fat, he was short, you know, he was middle aged. You can't even tell that person's age. But somehow you have to embed some elements in that telephone transcript, which allows readers to make sense of what is happening. So it was very, very difficult. And every 30 pages, you are changing perspective. And the book is written exactly as you have read it. Yes. In the sense, it was not as if I wrote one complete story of one character, divided it into those 6 segments, and then started the second one. No, I was actually writing 30 pages, then flipping the perspective, writing the next 30 pages in the next perspective, then flipping the perspective again, writing in that perspective. So I'm lucky I didn't land up in a lunatic asylum.
So to avoid that, you know, confusion, I said I'll just finish this off. I need to know. Otherwise, I can't sleep anyway. So I finished it. Thank you for that book. It was really, really good.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, as I said, that's very heartwarming, because it's a difficult book also. Because the payoff comes really at the very end, and you have to have the patience to follow all the stories. Look, I was working with, I wanted that alliteration, you know, that all her names should begin with only one alphabet. Yeah. So I could have done Sapna, Sunaina, you know, I mean, I tried, you know, 2 or 3 sequences. And somehow it was the D word that worked for me. And then it was very organic, because, you know, at one point I wanted her to, you know, become a Muslim. But I had no idea, how do I do it organically? You know, I just cannot say, okay, I become a Muslim. And then this whole thing came to me that, you know, she was Deepa. And then somebody in writing Deepa, instead of the P going down, they didn't drag it down fully, and it looked like Diba. And somebody said, ki, to iska naam Diba hai. And, you know, it's Eid today and there is food available. So are you Muslim? Then you can eat this food, because this is for Muslim. Then she said, haan bhai, main Muslim hu, I can eat this food. So, you know, and then, you know, from D, then it became Deepthi, it became Dasmeet, it became Dinah, it became Dolly. Because for me, yeah, because otherwise, you know, if one time she is Sunaina, then she is Diba, then she is Dolly, then she is, you know, Preeti, then she is Revthi, wo baat nahi aati. So that's why, you know, as I said, these are the, what should I say, the style elements which are important to me. And as I said, I spend a lot of time on that. And then once I said, you know, this looks good to me. Deepthi looks good, Diana looks good. And Dolly was very important, you see, because eventually I wanted a name which is anodyne. With Dolly, she could be anyone. You know, she could be Dolly Baveja. She could be Dolly Avasthi. She could be Dolly, you know, get a Muslim surname, Dolly Ahmed. She could be anybody. Because Dolly is the very generic kind of a name. Again, in every woman. So the D thing struck with me, and to me it looked just right. But I experimented with the M, and I experimented with S, and eventually I stuck with D. Yeah.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you so much for being here today, to everyone who's listening to us online as well. Thank you. We really appreciate your time. Thank you to all of you. You've come far and beyond, given how Bangalore is on a Saturday evening. Thank you so much for coming. And sir, thank you so much for being here.
No, Natasha, thank you. I think you have been one of the best conversationalists I've had. I have done about 10, 15 interviews already, and you are certainly among the best of the best.
Thank you.
So thank you for being in conversation. It was my honor entirely. And to have such a engaged audience, I mean, I think we had some many budding authors here themselves, you know, so for an author to be addressed by other authors, I mean, is a huge element of, what should I say, honor and respect. So thank you. And thank you to Sapna Book House for having me here.
Thank you so much. I'm Natasha signing off for today. Thank you. We'll now take a couple of book signings. If you have your copy, please get them here. We'll do a book signing.